Hello, everybody. Hopefully, everybody is here. Everybody is online. Bear with me as I get things set up. Today's been a busy day, and so I just finished all the prep and setup. So, um, yeah, we've got a lot going on today. Sorry for being a little bit late. Thank you for all your patience. Okay, let me finish this real quick. Okay, so what a wonderful week we had today. This week, um, the let me share this post. If you're on and you'd like to share the post, go ahead and do that. That would be greatly appreciated. Um, um, all right. So I did my part and shared the post with my friends, and I'll leave that up so I can see any comments that come on Facebook. So this week we had the opportunity. Um, so several things. If you watched last week and you saw the live show, the hour and a half live show, then you know that we had a lot going on. We have a lot going on, and one of the things that we talked about was all the business side of JA Memories. The business side is the fact that we are helping churches build up their podcast streaming and just up their game in the video world. Well, I just talked with one of my vendors and potentially have another client coming down the road. So if that works out, that'd be a great thing. So I'm currently working with a church right now on their podcast. I'm looking at all their gear right now, and so hopefully all that will go in soon, and then we'll be good. Because I enjoy watching churches get their message out, get their stuff produced, and get their message out on the world. I mean, we watch TikTok and we watch Twitter and we watch YouTube Live and we watch Facebook Live. We watch all these other platforms and all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can find every single kind of genre, message, comments, concerns, political views, everything under the sun. So I'm doing my best to help churches do the same thing and use the technology that's readily available to us to get that message out. So that's what one of the things that JA Memories loves to do, and we are succeeding in that. One church, one client at a time. So today, I promise not to stay too long on the business side. I do want to say that if you catch this feed and decide that, hey, you need help with your streaming, you want to up the game, then reach out. You can go to JAmemories.com, see a little bit of what we do. There's a contact form there. You can email me directly, and I would be happy to reach out and touch, get in touch with you, and see how we can help you. And there will be times that I can't help. I won't be able to get. I won't be able to help you simply because of the fact that what you need and what you want doesn't fit in my wheelhouse. I have experience with a lot of technology, but there are things that I can't do. So I'll be upfront with you, and I said that last week, and I'll say it every week. I'm not above saying, hey, it's best if you find someone else to do this because of my experience, because of my abilities, and also simply the fact I'm a one-man band at the current moment. So if there's a project that requires a extensive I'm more than happy to help coordinate and be the forefront, but if it requires a lot more hands-on, we're going to need some more hands. So obviously that's every client's different. I mean, reach out, free consultation, free I can't speak tonight. Consults, free consults. So reach out, and we can definitely see where we are, and see what you need, see how we can help you, and I'll be happy to be as much of assistance as possible. So with that, as I started the show, I said we had a great week. I had the opportunity to meet up with some friends of mine from California. With the ministry, we worked out of California for several years, and we got to meet some great people. And a couple we met out there really, really impacted everyone that we work with. And I got to it was interesting because the wife was, so this is a married couple that we knew, and I'm not going to tell you who they are today because I've got something coming up special. I don't want to ruin it, but the wife came into town. She had some family business to deal with up in Missouri, so in Kansas. So she drove into town and had lunch with a bunch of us from the office and got to see her. And then that night, I had the opportunity to discuss life and stuff with him via an interview online. So I've got that interview cut. It's all put together. I just got to put some final tweaks on it. Lay over some B-roll, and then I'll be rendering it out. Hopefully, the video will be ready later in the week, and I'm debating if I'm gonna premiere it next weekend or if I'm gonna premiere it later in the week. I haven't decided yet. Obviously, I've got to talk with the guest to see if he has a preference, since he is premiered on it. But at the same time, I want to respect my people who watch me live. So I'll let you know as it comes up, and yeah, and we'll go from there. So one other thing, I was talking with my family, and since JAmemories is a tech company, and since we do a lot of consulting with churches and businesses and individuals about technology, my family was going, why don't you do a tech show, a review show, and stuff like that? So I'm working the details out. I'm getting this stuff put together. Obviously, it will still be on JAmemories Facebook and YouTube pages. But I don't know exactly when we're going to start that. But we will have a tech show some other night other than Saturday night. Saturday nights will remain the faith side of JAmemories. And then I'm not sure exactly what night. I've got to talk with my family and find out what night's best for the family to do something like that. Sometimes it will be pre-taped. I can warn you right now. Other times it will be live demoing software, hardware, and stuff like that. So keep your eyes open for that, and we'll get that going here in the next couple weeks. But after that, we started talking last week about just living life and getting above all the political views. I'm reading a book, and I've mentioned this several times, and to be honest, it takes me a while to get through a book. I'm not the most affluent reader. My wife is. She could read a book, and depending on the size of the book, she can read a book in one day. And she can read a heavy book, a thick book like this in a couple days. Me, it takes me, several weeks to read a book. And I'm getting better. But I'm reading a book right now on attitude. John Maxwell. I like John Maxwell. I've got John Maxwell's Leadership Bible, and I read that, and I also I like reading his books about leadership and just different aspects of leadership. And the book I'm currently reading is on attitude, discussing the different aspects of attitudes and how life points you in different directions and guides you throughout your life, and every single person goes through life a different way. And we see this very evident when you watch twins, or when you watch family members, same family members, and who go through the same scenarios, but they all have different perspectives. And life is always about different perspectives. It's about different ways of thinking. And one of the things that we always are concerned about, and we make sure that we the one thing that I want to discuss is how that affects you. How is it that you can go through a situation and yet come out completely different? My wife reminded me to make sure I grab a glass of water. Thank you. So, one of the... hold on one second. Want to make sure I line... I want to sign on to YouTube so that I can see who's live and if anyone's leaving comments. So, yeah. So anyway, one of the biggest challenges that we have going through life is, you think about it. Okay, you have different. There are certain things that when you grow up, you have no control over. You have no control over who your parents are. Some of us know our families very well, and some don't. Some know who their parents are, but don't have any interaction with them through their own fault or through faults of none of their own. I said that completely wrong. Some is to their fault, and some is because of circumstances they can't control. And because of that, there is a okay, sorry. I was getting. I should like I said. I literally got on. in 5 minutes. Anyway, so I've got. If you're on YouTube, I'm live now watching it, so you can leave a comment in the comments, and I'll see them both on Facebook and YouTube. So anyway, so so there are those that have families that are completely intact, and some families are so torn up, it's crazy. I mean, you're spread from here to Timbuktu. And one of the biggest challenges that we have as a as a human being is how do we deal with that? Are we what is the premise behind the very things that we interact with? And the circumstances of where you grew up. You, as a kid, you have no control of that. Unless, of course, you've ran away and you live on your own, then obviously you choose where to live. But again, some of that's dictated by the circumstances that you find yourself in. So, yes, there's always a reciprocal avenue of, okay, you have a choice, you make that choice, and then out of that choice, you have consequences, whether good or bad, that dictate the next set of events. And sometimes in life, those events set a spiral course of events that you have no control over. One of the things I'm teaching my kids is the unintended consequences of your actions towards other people. When we walk through life, when we live our life, when we go about our daily lives, we interact with people on a regular basis. And you can sit there and go, well, if I'm a hermit, if I live on my own, if I don't do anything, then no, I won't have any influence and I won't have any effect upon people. And that's not always true either, because you got to think about the fact that there are people that live around you that interact with you, whether when you go to the store or when you go to when you go into town. You might live on your own. Sure, you live on your own property. You have no interaction with people, but at some point, someone's gonna have to bring you food, or you have to go get food, or someone's have to give you gas for your generators, or whatever you may end up having. At some point, somebody's going to interact with you, whether you want them to or they want to. But at some point, people are going to interact with you. So how we live our life and how we go about living that example dictates the set of circumstances and the consequences of how we live our life. Now, that doesn't mean we can't live our life the way we need to, or the way we want to, or the way that God calls us to. It's just that we have to be mindful of the fact that there are consequences to certain ways of living our life. Because of that, how we interact with people, the decisions that we make, have bigger impacts than we can even think on our own. One of the things that I try to do, and I'll be honest with you, it's hard, but one of the things I try to do is I try my best to figure out, based on certain circumstances, based on certain issues, and if I'm about to do something, if I'm going to be involved in a certain situation, I do my best to figure out how that's going to affect the people around me. Perfect example was when I told you about this new show I'd like to do. What's the first thing I said? I don't know what day because I got to check with my family. You know, obviously it's on in my heart and my desire to go live, do tech reviews, talk about the technology stuff, and but I have to remember I have a family who relies on me, who needs my interaction on a daily basis. And one of the things that I have to be mindful of is when I'm live right now, nobody's interrupting me. Nobody's coming down here and running through the house and, doing those things. So that's taking away from my time with my family. That's why last week I mentioned that if something comes up on a Saturday night, I would leave a message on Facebook and YouTube that says, hey, we're not going to be live Saturday night. I was this close to having to post this week simply because I was updating my computer 15 times this afternoon and evening, and it got down to about 7 p.m. and none of this was set up. Now, it didn't take long, but I also had to figure out that the fact that dinner wasn't done yet. So I had to work with my wife, and she did a great job getting the food ready for the family. But again, circumstances and situations, sometimes out of your control, sometimes in your control, affect everyday life and how we go through that life, how we go about doing those things, and what we respond to and how we respond to it is where we're going tonight. One of the things that I'm constantly reminded about attitude is we all have the opportunity. We all have the opportunity to either be happy, grumpy, sad, or indifferent. And there's a myriad of other attitudes you can have. But those are some of the most primary. And based on what goes on in life, based on how you live, the circumstances around your life, you can live in a state of perpetual happiness. You can live in a life of perpetual hatred. And that's your choice. See, the choice comes down to, we have these environmental situations. We have these situations and these, how would I say it? Circumstances that we can't control. Every single person living young, middle-aged, old, we all have situations that we cannot control. How other people react. How when we're driving down the road and someone slams on their brakes in front of us. There are things in life that we cannot help. When the water bill comes and all of a sudden you realize you had a leak somewhere under your slab and you didn't know about it. You can't help the fact that it's in the past. That bill still is due. Now, obviously, you can fix the leak so it doesn't happen again, but at the same time, you have no control over what happened in the past. As I said before, we have no control over who our parents are. Some are blessed to have families that are great, loving families. Others are perceived as being great because they seem to be happy. But if you look behind the curtain, you realize that may not be the truth. And then you have some families that the parents have absolutely nothing to do with the kids. Is that the kid's fault? No. That is a situation where the kids have no say over what's going on. But we all, every single one of us, every single moment of every single day, have the opportunity to control the one thing, and that is our attitudes. We've talked about attitudes a lot on this show. We've discussed attitudes. I'm constantly reminded of David. King David, he had all the authority in Israel. He had all the power. He was the ruler, so he dictated what people did. And he stumbled. He had his problems. And many of you know the story. And if you don't, the story of Bathsheba. And he sinned. Simple as that. He wanted something, he took it, and then when he realized the error of his ways, he tried to cover it up. And when that didn't work, he said, you know what? Let's do something else. Even worse. You sit there, I'm sitting there going, okay, so this is the proverbial, when you're in the hole, grab the shovel and dig deeper. And that's what David was doing. He was continually digging a hole further and further and further until finally he was so deep there was no way out. Now, being the king, you would think, and he may have had this thought going, I'm the king, nobody's going to find out. Even if they do, there's nothing they can do because I'm the king. Well, it's not the way God works. Because God has a way of finding things out and bringing people to their knees. It may not be on our timetable. People outside of the situation may have to suffer consequences. And just because we do get called out, and just because we do I'm jumping the gun. Sorry. So I believe it was Jonathan, one of the prophets, maybe Samuel. I gotta pull up the story. I gotta reread the story. Anyway, the prophet came in and said, no, king, there was a story. And I got a story for you. And King David goes, okay, what's the story today? And he tells the story about this elaborate scheme. And in the end, the prophet goes, so what should happen to that man? And he basically laid out the whole story about what David had just done not too long ago. But used different terminology, different phrases, and twisted a little bit so it wasn't crystal clear that, hey, he's talking about me here. So he asked David what should be done, and David had a harsh statement of what punishment should be. And the prophet goes, O king, you are that man. At that very moment, King David had a choice. Because in King David's authority, he had the right of the kingship to cast out that prophet. And we've seen it throughout history. People who are called under the fire, called out for their sin, instead of confronting their sin and asking for forgiveness, persecute the persecutor, the prosecutor, I guess you'd call him, the person bringing up the fact that, hey, you've sinned. But we look at David and we see what David did. We see his attitude. And we've talked about it before, and I'm constantly reminded of that simply because the way David responded, humbling himself, asking for forgiveness, admitting to the fact without hesitation, yes, I am that man, puts into perspective, hey, throughout life, we're going to make stupid mistakes. We're going to make dumb mistakes. We're going to make mistakes that are blatantly, we know without a shadow of a doubt that we're sinning. But there are times when God says, you know what? I admit, yes, you sinned, but when you ask for forgiveness, I'm going to forgive you. Because what was David called throughout the Bible? He was known as the man after God's own heart. You see, God, in all his wisdom, in all his knowledge, in all his omnipotence, he knows that we're going to sin. He knows the nature of human beings. Hence why he sent Jesus Christ to save our souls. Because, as mentioned before on this show, God's purpose in creating human beings was to have a relationship with them, to have a communication with them. We see that in the Garden of Gethsemane. We see that in the Garden of Eden. We see that repeatedly throughout history, that God wants a relationship with his people. You know, when man was first put in the Garden of Eden, it says that God walked among them daily. And they would have communication and discussions and conversations daily in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus was praying, he'd go up a little bit further away from the disciples, but he said, please pray with me. Jesus wanted his disciples to have that communication. Because what is prayer? Prayer is a communication with God. Now God, again, in all of his wisdom and all of his knowledge, knows full well that he can't be among sin. So he created this cycle of a way to cleanse the soul. It was a sacrifice. But in the end, he knew that even if his people would continually do the sacrifice, that sacrifice wasn't good enough. And the fact that sacrifice did not cleanse everybody. And that's where Jesus comes in. You see, even Jesus had his doubts. Even Jesus had his questions. Even Jesus had his temptations. You're reminded of the fact that at the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus prayed, if this cup could pass, please let it so. And he was talking about the cross. He knew fair well within the weekend, by the end of the weekend, he'd be dead. Now, there's a question about whether or not Jesus fully understood what all that he was talking about. He knew that the temple was be brought back up. He knew that he was the bread of life. But did he understand completely? Did he understand the ramifications of what was going to happen? I'd like to believe so. But you can see in the desperation of that cry that even Jesus was like, Lord, if there's any other way, if there's absolutely any other way we can do this, let's do it. But his final words was, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. You see, we live in a world where there are only certain things we can do. There are people in power who make decisions. Our job, obviously, is to vote for those people. But once they're in power, they make the decisions. We have to live with the consequences. It's the same way when we have a family. And as the parents, we make the decisions. And our kids have to live with the consequences. Now, I say consequence a lot because consequence is the effect of a cause and effect. So consequences often hold a negative connotation, but consequences are both good and bad. They can be good, they can be bad, regardless of what they are. So throughout our lives, we are going to have to suffer consequences, good and bad, based on the decisions we make, decisions people around us make, people we don't even know make. And then there are going to be situations that absolutely no one has control over. The weather. Situations in weather's the big one. I'm sure there's other ones, I just can't think of them. But there's circumstances that absolutely no one has a control over. And we, as human beings, will have to suffer the consequences. Now, we all have the ability to respond, and that's where this is all going. This is all where it all culminates to the fact that it's our attitude that we do have control over. When you stub your toe, what's the first words that come out of your mouth? That's your attitude. When people swerve in front of you and cut you off in the middle of the highway, what's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? For those of you that play video games, when you die from some stupid mistake you made, what's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? All of that's attitude. The Bible speaks of the fact that it says that what's in the heart, the mouth speaks. So, how do we get a better attitude? How do we get a better disposition of life? And that's simply by reading this book. We learn through this book. We learn through the Bible. When we put the words in our mouths, when we put the Word of God into our hearts, that's what's going to come out. The attitudes are going to come out. Does that mean that we're going to be 100% perfect? Absolutely not. The Bible specifically says that no one is perfect. No, not one. So we're striving to be perfect, but we're not pretending that we're perfect. So regardless of what circumstances are around you, regardless of what your situation is. Always remember, your attitude is your decision. How you respond to life is your decision. No one can take away your attitude. No one can dictate how you respond to life. That's completely up to you. If nothing else, that may be the only aspect of your life you can control. But we always have to remember that God looks upon the heart. See, throughout our lives, we can pretend when we go to church. We can pretend when we live around people. We can speak the right words. We can say the right things in front of people. But what's in our hearts could be hidden. And that's where God says, Jesus was telling the parable of the sheep and the goats. And he was commenting on the fact that there are going to be people who go up to heaven and says, "Hey, I did this for you. I did that for you. I was a messenger for Christ, and I spoke of your love and I spoke of your truth." And Jesus is going to say, "I didn't know you." Because it's not about our works. It's not about what we do, not about what we say and how we respond. It's about our attitudes. On this interview, give you a small sneak peek about it. We talked about the fact that the heart is what makes the difference between a godly person and a good person. You can be a good person, live your entire life as a good person, but have a heart that's not following after Christ. A heart that is not following Christ. So remember, we will continue this. Like I said, I'm still reading this book, and I'm going to be reading this book for a while. But as I read it, I'll pick out other areas of aspects of attitude to discuss. But always remember, just because you had an attitude yesterday in one area and you lived your life a different way yesterday doesn't mean you can't change. And just because you sit there and go, "Well, I've already ruined it because I've already lived my life and I've already done all these things." No, that's not the truth at all. You have that opportunity to sit there and change your attitude. It's not going to be easy. You're going to continue to fall back to the old ways of doing things. I was sitting there talking with a friend of mine, a coworker of mine at the office, and she mentioned that there's this thing. I haven't seen it yet. She described it, so I'll describe it as best as I can. But it's how did she phrase it? It's a wheel of adjustments, or some kind of wheel that you write down certain things and it reminds you, hey, can you do these things? Can you, it's a reminder of, hey, these are things I want to do. Habits. It's a wheel of habits. And you write down your habits that you want to, whether it be improve, do, get involved in. And habits cover a wide variety of things. So leave it to your imagination to figure out what habits you need to write down. But you write down your habits. You write down, sorry, my mic's covering my hand. You write down your habits, right? Say you have 4 habits you want to do every day. And so you write them down. And you have a 30-day wheel. And you tick off every day when you do that habit. And at the end of the month, you tally up, okay, for this month, let's take, you want to get in and you want to start reading your Bible more. So you write down, read Bible. Okay? And then, so you have Bible reading on there, prayer, and workout, and cook meals. All right? So 4 things. So day 1, you read your Bible. Check it off. Day 1, you pray. Check off. Day 1, you cook and you go work out. Great, you did a perfect day. 4 out of 4. But the point of the whole thing is the habit tracker, the habit idea. One of the things we can do on that is write down, okay, I want to change my attitude in this area. I want to change my attitude in how I respond to negative things towards me. Change my attitudes when negative things happen against someone else. However you need to say it. But those things are, and the thing that you'll realize when you look at your habit chart is it's not perfect. You say you wanna read your Bible 4 days a week to start with, pray 5 days a week, and cook 3 days a week. Well, by the end of the month, you may look at the chart the first month and go, well, I only read my Bible 1 day a week, and 1 week I didn't read it all. Prayer, I got in twice a week for most weeks. 1 week I didn't pray at all. Cook, yeah, I cooked once the whole month. And you realize that it's something we work towards. And that's where the grace of God comes in. God's continual grace towards our repetitive lifestyle. We're always striving towards that gift that God's got towards us. So, let me leave that with you. Hopefully you got something out of that. If you enjoy these videos, share them with your friends. If you're watching on the replay, #replay, let me know that you're watching the replays, and we'll catch you next week. As of right now, the plan is to be live next week. I'm not aware of any family conflicts that will interact with going live, but you never know what would happen. So I will leave a post if that's going to change. But I'll be live Saturday night, 8 o'clock. Keep your eyes open for any posts about a new show coming up. I will, when I announce it, I will announce the start date. So I will post knowing full well when we go live. And I will not go live without posting an update about when we go live, to give you guys a little teaser about it. And also keep your eyes peeled for that interview I was able to do this week. And we'll catch up next week. God bless you all. Have a great week. May you all be blessed the rest of this weekend and also for the next week coming up. May you be blessed beyond measure, and may your needs be met according to God's will. God bless you, and always remember, God loves you no matter who you are or where you are. God bless. We'll catch you next week.